All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Tennis Channel Inside In on the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. Joined now by, after months, even years of maybe negotiating, get her back on the show. 1992, she was inducted to the International Tennis Hall of Fame as the youngest member ever. Holds true as we got the Hall of Fame inductions coming up this weekend. Tracy Austin, TC's own, welcome back to the show. It's been far too long, but always a treat and always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Mitch. Glad to join you. It has not been years, buddy, not years.
No, I kid. I say that in jest. I know how busy you are and how your place in the game is and how everybody wants to get a piece of Tracy, whether that's America at Tennis Channel Studios or abroad across the pond in England, where we're just wrapping up the Wimbledon Championships. And before we dive into that, I wanted to know how your fortnight was, how your 2 weeks were, a lot of broadcasting duties, but also what I would imagine is a special place for you, somewhere you've been going for most of your life, what it was like back at the All England Club.
I love it. I love the 2 weeks over in England. I actually arrive always the Sunday before and love to just get started. I feel like I know, because I do BBC and we cover the matches right on the court, right behind the court, really level. But yet we do a lot of our live stuff on center court on the other side. I feel like I know every crevice of center court, court 1, court 2, court 3, court 12, court 18. I just love that place. It's just got such great history. As soon as you walk in, you can feel the history, you feel the beauty. It's really quite overwhelming, and it absolutely, after decades, it never gets old.
Yeah, I would imagine that your summers are marked by, events like tennis players are very, rigid with what their life's like. And Wimbledon's just been a part of your fabric for so long. Very special, though, that you still have that feeling that it means so much to you this far removed from your playing career. That said, I did want to ask you, one of the people you got to work with was Ashleigh Barty, and I saw that she was doing commentary, and I didn't know what her schedule was. And then lo and behold, exciting news, she's working with our own Tracy Austin. So what was it like working with Ash? Still all of her life, all of her journey, still under 30 years old, which is shocking to say. But what was it like working with Ash and being commentating partners?
First, it was fantastic. She is just such a down-to-earth young lady, young, 28 years old. So I felt sometimes like, oh, Ash, I'm going to push you out of this commentary booth tonight, because I called the final when she won 3 years ago. And obviously one of my favorite players to watch because of the elegance in her game, the variety, the variation. She's not that big, so she has to get it figured out with all of her tools that she has. And she has a lot, and how she can kind of create openings with her game style against the bigger hitters. So it was fun to do her matches, and then it actually became fun to call matches with Ash. We called actually 3 matches together. I actually called with her the first match that she'd ever done in commentary. She didn't do any in Australia, nothing at the French, no smaller events. So boom, let's start right with Wimbledon center court. And I think the BBC trusted me to help her. And as they were saying to her, we have Hawkeye, we've got Tennis Fizz, we've got stats over here, we've got 3 monitors. It's like you're flying a spaceship in there, and it's quite tight. And so I felt that it was good for her to, come along for the ride and see how there's a lot going on. And one thing, Mitch, that's kind of interesting is when, talking and working at Tennis Channel, that the producer doesn't come into our ear unless they need to talk to us, unless there's something specific. Very weird and hard to get used to, but they have what they call is their director on the entire time that you are calling matches. So it says camera 7, zoom in, camera 16, a little closer, get down to the feet, get down to the grip. Camera 4, let's get down, let's get the whole court, let's get above. And you are hearing all of that while you are trying to extract what's happening on the court, working with Hawkeye, which obviously you push the button and you talk with them quietly. So there's just a lot more going on. I'm digging into that because for Ash, I think it was a little overwhelming at the beginning, but then she got it. And you just really dig into being a player and what is it like to be out there at that specific time, that specific moment in a match, what can be done tactically, strategically, emotionally to change the match around. She's just a great lady. I mean, she seems like one of those people that's very content with their life. And you meet so few people that are like that, just very balanced, has a little boy, 1 year old. Hayden is married to her love of her life, Gary, who they've dated for a long time. Plays a little golf, played a little bit of tennis, played actually invitational doubles over there, lost in the finals with Casey Delacqua. But she just seems pretty content with her life, and it was a pleasure to be around her.
Yeah, I saw the quote. You thought about it, but you were like, I'm not going to ask her about coming back. It's a sensitive topic. She's done and happy with where she is. But, I was impressed too with her analytical approach. You can tell how sharp she is by some of her commentary. Also, the phrases were great too, because I had one written down. I was watching that match, the feed of that match with where Iga lost to Putintseva, where she said she's put the world #1 under the pump. And I'm just like, Australian phrases are the best. It's funny to hear her say that.
Absolutely. And then sometimes, and the English, of course, have their own phrases, and we Americans have our own phrases. So everybody's working well together. And sometimes we'll say, hey, what the heck does that mean? So yeah, it was, I think her forehand, Iga's forehand was under the pump. Putintseva really broke that down. And Iga, #1 in the world, getting for 4th Roland Garros, but she really struggles on the grass. That was tough to see. She was just bamboozled. She was flummoxed as to what to do, and she's gonna have to figure out how to shorten up that backswing on the forehand side.
Well, on the women's front and on that side of the draw, we saw Barbora Krejčíková beat Jasmine Paolini in a final that none of us saw coming. And really, there were upsets. There was a withdrawal with Sabalenka. There was some drama that happened. The first thing before we heap praise on Krejčíková and these finalists, Tracy, I was struck by how this illustrated the depth of the women's game. Like, say what you want about the all-time greats of past eras. You certainly know very well how dominant some of those women were. This one was not top heavy, but this showed you, and I think a lot of people yourself have even said, the top 30, top 40 women, female tennis players in the world are as good as we've seen in multiple eras. And this was another example of that. 2 women that weren't necessarily picked to go deep into this tournament, put on a heck of a final, beat tremendous players, and in Krejčíkova's case, went all the way and got the title.
Yeah, it really is interesting how I think, especially when we get to grass, because it's such a foreign surface for most players. There are so few players that arrive from Roland Garros and say, yes, I get to play on the grass. Donna Vekic is one of those. And so her game moves up a number of levels with her style of play and her success in the past. So because of that, you think of Krejčíková beating Kudermetova in the first round. It was 7-5 in the third, volley and nets in the second round. I think it was 5-6. So she was kind of scraping through these matches. She wasn't dominating. There is so much depth, and particularly, again, the biggest transition in our sport, going from the slow red clay for 2.5 months to a shortened season for about a month. Most people get to play 1, maybe 2 warm-up tournaments, some none. Iga didn't play any before Wimbledon starts. And you've got a major where it's very different. The mindset changes, the tactics. You have to be first strike tennis, because even though the grass is so much slower and higher bouncing than it was 2 decades ago, it still is quite fast. You can get late very quickly. So I think you're exactly right. I mean, you had Ostapenko in the quarters, and she lost to Krejčíková. Ostapenko's had success in the past. You had Rybakina, you had Svitolina, who'd been a 2-time semifinalist. I'm just looking at the draw here that I brought back soon. That was a crazy story. She's a qualifier, and all of a sudden beats Raducanu on center court and played incredible tennis. That was a life-changing tournament for her. But I think my favorite match for me, and maybe because I called it and I was right there, was the Vekic Paolini semifinal. That was the longest women's semifinals in the history of Wimbledon, 2 hours and 51 minutes. I just love the way that Donna, who was so tired getting to that point, was still able to dig in. I thought she might be too tired. She had so many 3-setters. And then I love when Paolini lost that first set easily, she was able to make a few adjustments and get to a third set, and then it was on. They both played very well in that third set, and it was just power tennis to the corners, great moving. And sitting there at 8-7, Donna Vekic has 8-7, and Paolini at that stage hits the fastest serve that she hit all day at 108 for her first serve, and takes it to 8-all, and then wins the next 2 points. To me, that's what it's about, is being able to raise the level, not looking for an error from your opponent in the semifinals of Wimbledon. It was fabulous drama. I was exhausted after calling that match. It felt like a roller coaster, but it was a lot of fun.
That match was incredible. you know, Vekic having played, I think, 4 deciders to get to that point, the Badosa match that lasted with all the rain delays 7 hours, and Paolini coming off of Roland Garros, where it would have been easy to take the side door and not prioritize Wimbledon. But I want to ask you, because both of those players, including the finalists too, late 20s, pushing 30, hitting some of their best tennis of their life. What do you think it is, I guess, on the bigger picture of how these tennis players, how these WTA players can find their stride and how it can all come together as they get to a point where in previous eras, you might think, oh, you're past your prime, but we saw Paolini, Vekic, and Krejčíková play some of the best tennis, if not the best tennis of their lives.
I love this. I love this story because there are so many players out there that are at a certain level, whatever that level is, whether it's 30 or if it's 50 or if it's 110. And they're looking at Paolini, who had never been past the second round of a major until this year. That's nuts. That's insane.
Didn't win a Wimbledon match before this year.
Hadn't won a Wimbledon match. She was 0-3 in qualifying, 0-3 in the first round. I think, Mitch, she hadn't won a main draw match on grass on the WTA Tour either.
That's correct.
It wasn't until this year at Eastbourne that she actually won a match on grass. And then, so I think it's a fabulous story. I think, to me, what it says is that everybody has their own journey. There's some that come into their own at 14, 15, 16, whatever it is. There's some that it's 20. You know, Roger, I think, was 22 when he won his first major. But let's just say most of the time people don't win their first major, or kind of Krejčíková had that Roland Garros in 2021, has had so many injuries, the ups and downs, the roller coaster ride that she's had. And then I don't think there would have been too many that would have said, I'm going to pick Krejčíková to win this title. She was 0-4 on clay. She had back injury in the spring, but somehow you claw your way through and she has the tools to win. I think it's fantastic. And I just think it's a lot of fun to watch Krejčíková handle the moment, because she seemed, I did a few of her matches. I did the Ostapenko match. I did the Daniel Collins match. There were moments in those matches where her forehand would, it would fly. And then she'd throw in a few double faults and you'd think, okay, the nerves are showing up there. So for her to hold on in that final and keep that forehand in check and actually be a huge weapon, and the serve as well was great.
Yeah, for Krejčíková in that match, you mentioned the final being such a brutal, drawn out affair, a great final for sure. When it came down to it, when she had to serve it out, serve was consistent. She built up that muscle memory. I'm going to come to net. I'm going to pin Paolini in the corner. And I'm going to trust the gifts that I have. It is just so fun to watch her tactically too, because I think one of the critiques about tennis on both tours sometimes is that there is a lack of variety. With Krejčíková, you see a different type of player. To watch her figure it out as a fan, I think is very special. And it's somebody that, look, the resume is there. Now she has 2 singles majors. She's got 7 doubles majors. She's got a great record against the top players. This was a dream of all dreams, as she said, the best day of her life.
Absolutely. And I think this just kind of solidifies the major that she won. And we know the backstory, the Jana Novotná story, and asking for advice. Going into the Daniel Collins match, just working with Hawkeye, she had hit only 20% slices on that backhand side, which was, again, insane to me. When you have a backhand slice, it's that natural, that effective. She started using that more against Daniel Collins. And I think that's what really helped her, is that variation. Nobody wants to see the low slice and then the ball scoot through, and then the forehand that she hooks around and gets that cross court going. So there's just a lot going on, and fun to see her put everything together and win the major and feel so good about it.
And got the Wimbledon ball and got to dance with Carlos Alcaraz out of it too. So no, it's
that was adorable. You know, they bring dresses and they bring dresses to the locker room. So the ladies, because who has a dress, right? Who has a dress that's that gorgeous? And so they get to pick the dress and go to the ball. It's very special, as Wimbledon is. There's so many traditions that they do that make it that extra special.
More with Tracy Austin here on Tennis Channel Inside In. We're recapping the Wimbledon Championships 2024. On the men's side, it was Carlos Alcaraz defending his title, a rematch of last year's final with Novak Djokovic. This one was not as close. Straight sets for Alcaraz. Tracy, I can get to the metrics and we'll get to the numbers here. Alcaraz now has 3 of the last 5 singles major titles. But what I saw was, and if you want to compare him to the historically greats where he's on that path, he ramped up his play in a major. He got better as the tournament went on. He got better against the best competition. And he had Novak Djokovic, which I never thought I'd see. He had him searching for answers out there. It was a master class, a very mature performance by somebody who is nowhere near what his peak level can be.
It was exciting. It was exciting to see Alcaraz. Glad that I get to say it that way again, because they changed it over there to Alcaraz. And that I feel like I'm lisping, Mitch. I don't want to lisp.
No,
but so Alcaraz, who played so well against Tommy Paul. I think Tommy actually pushed him. Tommy's such a good athlete, and Tommy had beaten him a couple of times before. But I think it's good to go through a tournament where you're getting pushed a little bit more each round. I think that was actually good for Novak to not be pushed at the beginning, because he had that knee surgery 3 or 4 weeks before. So he needed to build. He needed to slowly build into the tournament, play a match, have a day off. But then once he got into the meat of the tournament, when de Minaur pulled out, Novak had 3 days off. That's a little strange. You kind of lose the rhythm a little bit. And then he had Musetti in the semifinals, which Musetti's played unbelievable, but it's not the same level as playing a Medvedev or a Zverev or even a Fritz. Then Novak's level had to really jump to playing Carlos instead of getting that slow, bit by bit level elevation. So first of all, let's say Novak coming back from a knee surgery. Are you kidding me? 5, 6 weeks before and getting to the finals. Kudos to you, Novak, 7-time champion. But at the end of the day, Carlos Alcaraz served incredibly well, returned incredibly well. Sometimes it seemed like he was, I don't know, toying with Novak. It just was so good. It was like you're scratching your head, like, this is, now you're taking tennis to another level. And this is very exciting of where we can go when you think about Sinner and the athleticism that he has. So didn't get nervous until he's serving for it at 40 love. And it was kind of fun that he had to wiggle out of that and figure it out. And to see Carlos get through and get his 4th major, just building. I think it's exciting for the next, decade and a half to see where men's tennis goes, because there's certainly a few in the conversation, but is Carlos starting to really separate himself?
Do you know how good at tennis you have to be to, in your words, toy with Novak Djokovic?
Well,
that's the thing. I know. I
want to take that back. Not
Okay.
toy, but he wasn't toying with him. But it just seemed like Novak couldn't get into those points very well,
right.
And it was unusual to see in the finals for Novak to be facing that kind of power.
He admitted it. He said, I wasn't, he came out on fire. It was different. It was, as you said, a couple levels up from what he was used to in the tournament with Alcaraz too. And we can see how athletic he is. We can see all the tools that he has. As Paul Annacone said, he's got so many tools in his tool bag. But what strikes me is how mature he is, for one, handling the moment. You're not just playing Novak Djokovic. You're playing his aura. You're playing a Wimbledon final. You're having a match for your legacy. But you mentioned his serve. He knows there isn't much, but he knows what he has to work on, what he has to improve, areas to take it methodically. That's just so valuable. And at his age, I mentioned 21, there's a lot of people out there, Tracy, saying that this is the greatest. Novak said it too. This is the greatest 21-year-old we've seen in the sport. I don't know what side of the fence you are on there, but it really does show you how mature and how practical he is as a tennis player who just wants to get better every day, that he's able to work on the areas of his game that could be even better.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that are so exciting. First of all, the joy that he brings to the game. He smiles during some of the points. He actually looks like he's enjoying the moment. I will give you a little insight. My husband was there, and the morning of, he was on this grass balcony above, and there was really nobody around. And Carlos was walking to what was going to be court 14, where they get to actually warm up on a court at Wimbledon. They don't have to walk all the way over to Arangi because there's only 2 left. And Carlos is walking along, and kind of in between where the player's tee is and the center court. My husband just said, "Hey," he said, "Hey, come on, Carlos." And he looked up and he waved and he gave the thumbs up. And it just looked like he was so relaxed. I mean, most people would be so tight at that moment. They're going to warm up to play a Wimbledon final. The joy that he brings, the family that he has, seems very grounded. I love that. Mm-hmm. The serve, he talked about the beginning of the tournament. He didn't feel like he was serving as well as he could. So he's putting every day a little bit extra on the serve. Love that. It paid off at the end. A couple of other things, the nerves you talked about at the end, but was not nervous. Remember how nervous he was Roland Garros last year, and it became cramps. He's managed that now. He's learned. I think it helps to have Juan Carlos Ferrero, former world #1, in his camp. The other thing was this year he played on Tuesday, Carlos, and Juan Carlos said, what we're going to do tomorrow is Wednesday, we're going to practice in the morning. We're going to go play golf in the afternoon, and he's going to take Thursday off completely, no tennis. So that takes Carlos trusting a former world #1, knowing that he's had a long spring. He might be fatigued. He knows how to hit the ball. He's going to take the day off before the semis, as it turns out. So there's just a lot going on as far as a really solid camp that he trusts, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah, coming out in that final playing well is a difference from last year, because he said the first set I wasn't mentally in there, and now he just handles the moment. And
he owns it. He owns it. I mean, when you've won that many majors now, and you've beaten Novak last year, I'm sure you had to be intimidated by Novak winning it, 7 times at that point last year, and Carlos hadn't won it at all. So he's just a different player, a very mature and thoughtful player now.
Yeah, that story with your husband's great. It shows you how different players are. Some are relaxed, some are wound up. It made me think of the Federer Nadal story before their 17 Australian Open final, where Nadal's having a practice like you think he's playing an actual match, and Nadal and Federer's just sipping tea like 3 hours.
No, it's exactly right. I mean, Scott actually, then when he walked by, he took a picture, looking down, and he's just bopping along, and I thought, you know what, if that's how Federer was, it's just the different makeup of champions. Everybody handles it differently.
Sky's the limit for Carlos. Still a long way to go on his journey, but it's going to require the competition to raise their level, because this is clearly a guy that isn't going to go anywhere, and it's going to be tough to beat. But for Novak, the other side of that coin is
the one, can I say, the one that can, I think Sinner. I mean, I think Sinner had, we had so many injuries, Mitch. We had, Zverev hurt himself a little at the end, and you had De Minaur, who had to pull out altogether, a walkover. You had Dimitrov, who had to pull out mid-match. So I think Sinner at the end, I don't know if he hurt himself as well, but I think Sinner and Alcaraz were in good shape. Sorry to interrupt. I just thought we should insert Sinner in there because he's pretty amazing. Fantastic.
Still the #1 player in the world. And yeah, I think it was unfortunate. It sounded like he was a little sick, not feeling well. Also brutal to have that day happen when you're playing Daniil Medvedev, like of all the people that play when you're not feeling well. I agree. Sinner is the one guy that can push him and beat him on the big stage. We've seen it, but Alcaraz, again, in these moments, just rising up. The Djokovic piece, though, because he is now, again, 37 years old. This was a tremendous run to get to the final, even if the draw did line up for him in a lot of ways. But where he goes from here, we know the Olympics in the short term, then it's the U.S. Open. Tracy, he says he's prioritizing the big events at this stage of his career, but also where he goes, maybe not being the guy, maybe having these young players, at least one, maybe two, in Alcaraz and Sinner, that can beat him. Where do you see his next iteration of his career, knowing that maybe he's not the best player in the world anymore?
Yeah, I think it's only he's going to know. At 37, I think he's the only one that can know how full his gas tank is, how motivated he is. He's 24 majors. He was trying to break that tie with Margaret Court. He was trying to tie Roger Federer with 8 overall Wimbledon. So there was more than just that match on the line. There was a lot of history on the line. But at the same time, Novak has the most majors. So hasn't won a title this year, which is insane, but I think he's only played 7 tournaments. So he's definitely, it's a lighter schedule, because he knows at his age, maybe he wants to spend more time with his kids and doesn't want to, test his body too much. So I can't answer that. We don't know, what these guys are feeling. I see that now Rafa Nadal has his name on the entry list for the US Open. So I was thinking that maybe the Olympics was going to be the last. So we don't know. The love of the game, the love of the sport, and the way that they have been able to take care of their body better than other past decades of top players. Hey, I'm going to say, play as long as you want. We love to watch you.
Yeah, it's one thing to be like, he's losing it, he's falling. He's maybe the 3rd best player in the world. So how far is he really losing it? That's a testament to those 2 young men that have gotten to that point. So we'll see. We'll see what happens if he gets fully healthy. Yeah.
I think he's thinking that he can still win more. I mean, he said, I'm not going to play with this knee just to win a couple of rounds. I'm playing because I think I can, go deep and win it. So I don't think champions like that are thinking, we got to give him a little bit of leeway in the fact that it wasn't very long, and he's still wearing the knee brace, the knee thing on his knee. And so, maybe he'll build into it.
Well, full credit to Carlos Alcaraz, his 4th major title, 2nd Wimbledon. It was an interesting fortnight, himself winning along with Barbora Krejčíková on the women's side. Want to give a shout out to the doubles champions, especially our own Taylor Townsend winning that title with Siniakova. First of all, Siniakova, I think if there's anyone that gets honorary American citizenship, it's probably be her. She's just winning with all these American partners, Roland Garros with Coco, and now Taylor at Wimbledon.
She just wins with everybody. She just wins. Let's just call it. I heard Taylor on Tennis Channel talking about she was supposed to be committed to Beatrice Haddad-Maia the rest of the year. And when Siniakova became available and called Taylor, Taylor said, "Oh, okay, I can play." So Siniakova was the best player on the court. And I think that Taylor or Siniakova, however we want to call her today, Siniakova was, her returns, her nails, her interceptions, her poaches, her serve has actually improved because she used to be so much more open on her serve. She's been able to close it a little bit more now. Obviously playing on major stages, time in and time out. She's used to the big moments, and I love the intensity. This was a Saturday night match on BBC. BBC is like Tennis Channel, that it's on all day long. If there's tennis on court, they will be showing it. And so it was a Saturday night. I was done for the day. I went back, just propped my feet up and watched that match, and the intensity was incredible. I loved it. Dabrowski, she walks so fast, and then you've got Rutleff, who's used to work in a tanning salon. She retired for a little bit and then said, "You know what? I'm tired of changing these bed sheets. I'm going to go back to playing tennis." And now she's #1 in the world in doubles. You cannot make that story up. If you put that in a movie, they'd say, that's not believable. But it was Taylor and I think Siniakova, their intensity, they're talking constantly every single point. Even if there was a miss, they were pumping each other up. And obviously Taylor knows how to play doubles so well. Her lefty serve, her volleys, her athleticism, interceptions out there. And it was fun to see the joy for Taylor Townsend. It's been a long journey as former world #1 in juniors to win a major like that after losing in 2 finals. Go Tay-Tay.
We saw what it meant to her, the journey, having her son, battling back, putting so much into her comeback, into getting back in tennis shape, into working her way through this. It was the emotional release I couldn't imagine. So we're happy for her. And the men's doubles final was great too.
Oh, the men's doubles final.
I mean, shout out. I mean, that was, so again, we're gutted for the Australians. Thompson and Purcell had a heck of a match. They couldn't win. But for Harry Heliovara and Henry Patton, the local guy, somebody that has one of the most interesting backstories there is, to win that match, saving 3 championship points, that was, I'll say it, one of the best days of doubles tennis collectively that I've ever seen.
That was so exciting. And I actually called a match with Todd Woodbridge, who's Australian, the next day. He was gutted for the Australian duo of Jordan Thompson and Max Purcell because they had, we walked by Leighton Hewitt and Leighton's face was drawn. This was the next day. He still hadn't gotten over it. A competitor like Leighton, he said there were 3 match points. I don't remember, but I know at least 1. I remember Jordan Thompson missed a forehand volley on one of them. But to hear Henry Patton's story, apparently he was working at IBM doing the stats a few years ago as an intern. Oh, that's an unforced error. That's a forced error. That's a first serve. And then he comes out. I saw him playing some futures last year in doubles, not even challengers, some futures. And now he's a Wimbledon doubles champion as a Brit. And it was his partner that was the one crying. He was in floods of tears. Those are the moments that are so special because to be a Wimbledon champion like that is just going to change your life for the next 70 years, whatever it is. Yeah, it was and also a high quality doubles match, right, Mitch? Yeah. It was just fun.
It certainly was. He's a big chess guy too, so maybe he thought about things a little differently out there, but it was crazy.
Chess, you have a lot of time though.
Yeah, that's true.
Like he had to just go for it. And that forehand and the tiebreak was unbelievable from Henry Patton. So kudos to him. We love these close matches.
And the last thing on Wimbledon I want to say before I forget, mixed doubles champions, shout out to Shea Sway, whose doubles game is just remarkable. She seems like a hot commodity as well. She just wins wherever she goes.
She just wins.
Just the winner.
Hit it where they ain't, Shea Sway. I mean, she's just fun.
Yeah, it's the best. Well, wrapping things up with Tracy Austin here on Tennis Channel Insight, and a couple quick hitters before I let you go. I did want to just point out to Rafael Nadal's comeback as it's going forward now. He's gearing up for the Olympics, playing in Bastad, Sweden, a
Beat
tournament.
Borg yesterday. Beat Borg.
I know you'd enjoy that, right? We finally got the Nadal. I felt like it was a cool storyline. I know Leo Borg is, has a lot to live up to, but I thought he played pretty well. But
Yeah.
Nadal back on clay, and really, you mentioned the U.S. Open entry list. We don't know how much Rafael Nadal we have left. It's just good to see him and good to see him soak up these moments with his adoring fans more than anything.
Absolutely. And I think his son was there, his wife was there. Anytime we can see Rafa out there, he loves competing so much, and playing doubles at the Olympics. I think playing for your country is just so special, and playing doubles with Carlitos is going to be very special, and it's going to be high emotion. It's interesting to see Andy Murray. I mean, you just couldn't get him off the tennis court. You couldn't stop him from competing until his body just absolutely gave out. And I think it's going to be the same with Rafa. And they're used to doing it for so long, and they never tire of it. They don't mind traveling because they bring their whole entourage, their family with them. And we get the best of it because of that.
And we know that this time of year, there's a lot of different events before we get into North American hard court swing. There's one more grass event in Newport. There's clay events, and we're starting to make that transition. But isn't it interesting with this Olympic year and the Olympics being on clay that we're seeing so many players back to the clay? It's exciting in a way, because I know tennis can feel like a hamster wheel, but the transition isn't easy, and it is a little unique to say the least.
And there's a number of big time players that are choosing not to play because it is so difficult. 2.5 months on clay, and then you go on grass, and we saw a lot of shoulders taped. We saw some elbows that were sore. The balls get heavy because of the extra moisture. The ball changes. The players really would love, it's never going to happen, to have to play with the same ball each week. So now they've gotten through clay, then grass. Now they're ready for the North American hard court season, another change. But first, they've got to adapt and go back to the slow red clay. So someone like Raducanu, who had 2 wrist surgeries last year, one on each wrist, has decided not to go to Paris, because she said, I don't want so many ball changes, and the ball gets, you've got it. People were critical of her in Great Britain. They're saying, if you have a chance to represent your country, you've got to go. I'm all in with her. I mean, for her to just stay healthy is what's most important right now. So there's a number of others, but I'm really excited about it to see. I mean, Iga is going to be tough to beat on clay. She's back on where her game is just completely suited for that surface. So, I just feel like, Mitch, with more, it feels like more WTA 1000s than there were before, and 4 majors and the Olympics. This is a lot of demand on the body and the brain and the emotions for these players. So I hope in between they're able to get a lot of rest.
These players love their countries, but sometimes you have to think about what the breadwinner, tournaments are. Even when it's a Billie Jean King Cup tie, you have to manage your health. You have to manage your schedule. So I get it. It would be, selfishly, we'd want them to play all these events, but you have to look out for number one.
Well, when you look at our team, Madison Keys decided not to play on the American team. So Emma Navarro, she's that 4th player making it on, although I think she's 4th now. Her and Daniel Collins are Gleis. I don't know exactly, but so you got Collins, you got Pegula, you got Goff, which
Pretty
is
good.
incredible. And then you have Desiree Kravchuk playing doubles with Collins. And then on the men's side, you have Taylor and you have Tommy. I think Chris Eubanks. And tell me who the 4th is?
Marcos Giron.
Marcos Giron. So you have Ben Shelton, who chose not to play. Francis Tiafoe, who chose not to play.
Sebastian didn't play either. Corda decided not.
Sebastian Corda, you're right. So I think we have 5 in the top 30, which is amazing on the men's side.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Well, I want to ask you quickly before I let you go here. It's been a blast. Always is with Tracy Austin. I don't know why anyone would expect less, but it is the final rendition of the Newport tournament. We have the Hall of Fame this week, and I know, as I mentioned at the top of this, you were inducted, many moons ago as the youngest person ever inducted in the International Tennis Hall of Fame. But thoughts on this weekend and what it means? This year's class includes Leander Paes, Vijay Armitraz, and Richard Ingram Evans, a tremendous writer. But thoughts on just what this weekend means, what it meant to you, and how this will be a life-changing moment for the inductees.
That's such a great question, because I think the inductees don't really know what it's going to feel like until they get there. And I feel like a lot of the Europeans or even the Australians, because I was surprised how much it meant to Leighton a couple of years ago. They're like, yeah, it's the Hall of Fame. Yeah, whatever. And then they get here and they see the museum, and they see how beautiful the center court is, and the old center court, and they feel the history, and you really soak up the moment. When you're playing, you're not thinking about becoming a Hall of Famer, although Krejčíková, I think, will become one now with her second major for sure. But when you get here and you have other Hall of Famers that are there, and you have your family, and it's kind of the crowning glory. It's the cherry on top. It's the last thing that you're going to do, and it's really a recognition that you've had a fantastic career, and that you're going to go in with all the past champions that you've looked up to. So it's really special. It's very emotional. I think that the inductees, the three that we're going to have this weekend, will probably make extra great speeches. I always enjoy being part of it. First of all, Newport is a beautiful city. I'm a little bit sad that it is the last rendition of the men's tournament here. The first tournament, I don't know if it's been all the way through, was in 1881. They even had some of the US Opens here for a while. It was called the US Amateur at the time. But so a little disappointed that it's going to be the last, but I can understand. I guess the tournament was sold. I'm hoping that we continue to have, the Hall of Fame inductees for this weekend, because it really is a special. Andre Agassi will be here this weekend. Right. And Pleisters is coming. So it's going to be emotional. I think it's going to be on Tennis Channel on Saturday.
It's going to be great. We know it's ramping up too, because there is going to be a couple of heavyweight, I'd say, to say the least, Hall of Fame classes coming up.
Oh, wow. There is.
We're ramping up for the next couple of months.
And I hope that each one of them get to really go in on their own, because who wants to go in with Roger Federer? I mean, it'd be great, but it's like Roger Federer
like staggering Federer and Serena is the big one. You got to figure out that. Yeah.
That's a big one. Yeah. And then, I mean, there's just a bunch that are coming up, and which is exciting, because I think there's some years that are a little lean. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And
exciting.
The ones coming up are going to be special.
Tracy Austin, always a blast, always a pleasure. I did have one out the door question, because you live such an interesting life, as we know on this show. So I wanted to ask you, and I always like to go back into the history books of your life, if you wanted to talk about this photo that I'm sharing right now.
Oh,
1980. This is for 1980 with Dionne Warwick. At a charity event. That's all I know about it, but I saw this in the archives, and I thought, oh, this would be a good time to go blast in the past. A young teenage Tracy Austin with one of the premier singers of any time.
Mitch, I have not sure that I've ever seen that photo. I have no idea. I must say, I think I look about 16 or 17 there, and I think everything was going so quickly every single day, kind of like what Coco Gauff is going through now. Now, maybe she'll have a better memory, and there's social media, so pictures are remembered. But boy, I wish I could tell you where that was from, other than I know that she had a great voice and was somehow connected to my favorite singer of all time, Whitney Houston. But I love that. You just kind of threw that in there, Mitch. Throw a couple in next time we talk, because that's kind of fun. I've never seen that.
I wanted to make sure, I didn't know if you guys went up and sang like That's What Friends Are For, or just got up and sang together. But no, I like to keep you on your toes, because you,
on the way to San Jose, was it? Do you know the way?
Yeah, she's in that one too. Yeah. Yeah, and it's just look, it's fun to, like I said, you've done it all, and you've really, lived a tremendous life. So it's good to kind of go back and relive and get the story of, even if you don't remember it, which is even
if I don't have the story, Mitch, I should have just made one up. I don't know.
Yeah,
I could have.
She's great. Always, she's always at the tennis events. We love to see it. But Tracy, seriously, a tremendous honor talking to you, hearing your perspective on things. Thanks for coming on the podcast. It won't be as long in between. That's my promise to the audience, if Tracy will allow it. But Tracy Austin, it's always a blast talking tennis. Thanks for coming on Tennis Channel Inside In.
Always a pleasure, Mish. You know your stuff, and I'll see you next week at Tennis Channel.
Absolutely.
Bye, buddy.